Welcome to the Fine Year, a month-by-month YouTube presentation about a birding big year I made in 2019. This presentation covers October of that year, which I took another pelagic trip and chased a few other birds in California, and also visited Alaska a second time. Hopefully you'll find this entertaining or perhaps inspiring, maybe inspiring enough to attempt your own big year. Sites in this video include a pelagic birding trip in Southern California and Anvil Mountain and Safety Sound in Nome, Alaska. Early October began with another California pelagic birding trip, this time from Ventura Harbor out past the Channel Islands. Near the boat launch, an orange-crowned warbler was hanging out, so I took its picture too. This is a good time of year for shearwaters and storm petrels, such as this raft of black storm petrels taking off from the water. We also saw Ashy and a Leach's storm petrel on this trip. Shearwater-wise, pink-footed shearwaters were one of the main attractions. Sooty shearwaters were also around, as well as a few black-finted shearwaters. I was lucky enough to get a photo of one of my favorite pelagic birds, the Pomeranian Jaeger. Between this trip and the ones I'd taken in Monterey, I got all three Jaegers this year. The Monterey trip had been dogged by fog, but on this trip I got a much clearer photo of the South Polar skewhead that we had also seen in Monterey. This photo combination shows two of the Southern California alcids, the Scripps and the Crevaries merlets. The Scripps shows more white on its face, as well as bright white underwings. The Crevaries shows gray underwings when it flies. It is always fun to see mammals on these trips. Here are some California sea lions hunting a school of fish. We also came across a small pod of Rizzo's dolphins. These only show up on about 10% of the pelagic trips I take. As I mentioned last month, I needed to add a trip or two to approach my new 600 bird goal. Nome, Alaska seemed to fit the bill. I would have chances for several birds not seen this year, and maybe a lifer or two as well. I stayed in a motel named for a gold dredge. Here is one of the first birds I found, a glaucous gull. Near the Snake River at the base of the mountains, I found a pair of boreal chickadees. While photographing them, I drew the attention of a farmer's dog, which began barking. Shortly after, an eerie sound drifted down from the mountains in response. It was my first experience with howling wolves. Long-tailed ducks were fairly common in the ponds around the town. Here are a few more long-tailed ducks coming in for a landing on the Nome River. There's a spot on the road out of town called Cape Nome. It looked to be some kind of loading dock, but it wasn't active while I was there. Here's a common eider with a bill tinged with orange instead of the greenish tinged bills I saw in Maine on Atlantic birds. At that same location, I found my first lifers for the Nome trip, king eiders. They were a little hard to tell as they were in winter plumage instead of the male having the outrageous summer plumage that it sports. This tundra swan family is a good indicator that tundra swans probably nested in the area. There were several families of swans patrolling what is known as Safety Sound. There were many hunting shacks set up along the edge of the sound, so the ducks, geese, and swans kept a good distance between them and the shore. I thought one group of widgeons had some outliers, but it was really hard to tell at that distance. The photos revealed I was correct, as I found several Eurasian widgeons. I've got a red arrow pointing to a Eurasian widgeon and a green arrow pointing to a more common American widgeon. No crows up here, but common ravens were handy to harass the gulls and pick up any scraps around the shore. This one appeared to be hunting something, perhaps a mouse, in the reeds. This one goes on my ABA area lifers list, although I have seen it before in Europe. It's a snow bunting. I've only seen them in Ireland, not in North America. At one point, there was talk of this one being lumped in with the snow bunting, although it hadn't been done yet in 2019 when I saw it. It's a McKay's bunting, which is much whiter in its non-breeding winter plumage. Like the snow bunting, both species were quite skittish, unlike the ones I'd seen in Ireland. This bird was a real treat, a spectacled eider. In no estimate of birds I might see during the year had I included this. It was hanging back from a flock of about 20 common eiders in the Safety Sound, quite near the shore. I was so happy to find it, I was not at all disappointed that it, like the king eiders, was not in its breeding plumage. Back home in California, I poked around local parks before a non-birding trip to see our grandson the last week of the month. Here's a pair of our local quail, the California quail. The first wintering golden-crowned sparrows showed up this month. I only see these down here in the winter. Here's an interesting local bird, the wren tit. Typically it's a skulker, but their bouncing ping-pong bong calls are pretty common in the spring. Sometimes I can get one to respond out of season, as this one did. The American coot is abundant in local marshes and ponds. Mostly I ignore them, but sometimes one is pretty enough to catch my attention, as this one did. The American crows always seem to be around here in the suburbs. They like to use the roof tiles on our house as an anvil to break open nuts or pound other food into submission. They drive my little Boston Terrier buddy insane. All the life birds this month came from the trip to Nome. Those were the snow and McKay's buntings and the king and spectacled eiders. My year total has climbed to 589, so with 2 trips in the planning stage for December, my 600 goal was beginning to appear achievable. With a chunk of the month taken up by the family trip to Pennsylvania, I did not do much local exploring. I was aware of a rarity or two in the state, and I could have done a more diligent search for some of our local exotics, but for some reason neither prospect appealed to me. Instead, I was looking forward to another California trip I had planned for November. This would take me to another iconic birding location, the Klamath Basin. Check out the November video.